Mr. Chair, there appears to be some technical difficulties. One moment, please.
Yes, apparently Jonathan's having some connection issues.
Well, in the meantime, Dr. Mogi, welcome. It's good to see you here.
Thank you so much, and good to see everyone.
Good.
It's a lovely Thursday afternoon. We're glad we're not inundated with this phenomenon that we call snow that Tony Calcato has so much control over.
Who would have thought that snow would be the least of our worries these days?
Well said.
Welcome also from the University Senate, Messrs. Oliver and Shinbrat. Welcome also Gavin Mays, our new student representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
An audio test for me. Am I coming through now?
You are.
You are.
Never easy. Over to you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I apologize. I mean, everything was working fine earlier today. What can I say? Life is a journey. Thank you very much. I want to start by my comments, which will not be extensive, by honoring the memory of Professor Emeritus Joseph Seneca, who died over Thanksgiving weekend. There was a lovely tribute to him in Rutgers today. If you haven't seen it, please do check it out. I never had the pleasure of knowing him. He certainly is an admired, respected, and beloved member of the Rutgers family, a former vice president for academic affairs, a calming voice in that role for, I believe, 12 years, who was able to move the university mission forward during a very challenging time. He studied the New Jersey economy for more than 50 years and was an advisor to governors of both parties on economic trends. He was a close collaborator with Professor Jim Hughes, the former dean of the Blaustein School, in providing economic forecasts of our region. We salute his remarkable service to Rutgers and to the state. I turn now to two important naming opportunities that are before you, each special in its own way. I'm simply calling your attention to them. The conversation will happen in the body of the meeting. The first is the naming of 15 Washington Street in Newark for Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This beautifully restored building was the law school for 2 decades, and it's fitting that we rename it for a former law faculty member who pioneered women's rights and the rights of the underrepresented in her law practice and then on the Supreme Court. Chancellor Nancy Cantor will speak in more depth about the reasons we are eager and proud to name this building for Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the values she embodied. Second announcement for your consideration later on will be the naming of our new behavioral health center for Marlene Brandt. Marlene has a passion for mental health, especially in adolescence, which is always important, but heightened by these stressful times. She has given us what is the largest single gift from an individual in Rutgers history, and we can't begin to thank her enough. As Chancellor Brian Strom will explain in more detail, this first of its kind center will help address a lack of support services focused on behavioral health. I turn from those good news items to those good news items about Rutgers faculty and students. As was announced in Rutgers today, I wouldn't say about 3 weeks ago, I'm pleased to announce that, to share with all of you, that we have 4 faculty members in this year's class of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. Ken Irvine at the Waxman Institute of Microbiology for his work in developmental biology, Brian Strom in RBHS for his work in pharmacoepidemiology, Charles Weschler in Environmental and Occupational Health Sciences Institute for his work in indoor chemistry and chemical fates, and apologies if I mispronounce, to Hui Xiong at Rutgers Business School for data mining and mobile computing. I'm also pleased to announce that Camilla Townsend was awarded the Cundill History Prize for her book, The First History of the Aztecs, based exclusively on texts from indigenous people of Mexico. As a historian, I can tell you that this kind of recovery work was thought not even a half generation ago to be impossible. This is quite an accomplishment. We have a Marshall Scholar and 2 Schwartzman Scholars, and the Marshall, Maya Ravichandran, SAS New Brunswick class of 2021. This is the 2nd year in a row with the Marshall after more than 40 years without one, and I certainly hope this trend continues. We have 2 Schwartzman Scholars. The first is Julian Rosenblum, SAS New Brunswick class of 2021. And again, I may mispronounce the name, Malik Naibi, a 2018 graduate of Rutgers Business School, Newark and New Brunswick. On the academic front, last month, Prabhas Mogi and I announced a pass no credit option for undergraduates for fall 2020 grades. This is done in consultation with the provost and chancellors on a close to emergency basis. I want to use that term only reservedly. It is only for undergraduates. It came with a very strong caveat out of an abundance of caution and concerns about the potential deleterious impacts of a pass no credit grade on a transcript instead of a letter grade for professional school applications, financial aid status, et cetera. That is limited for now to fall 2020. As we think forward to winter and spring, we'll have a more timely an opportunity to be more timely in consultation. And I know that EVPAA Prabhas Mogi is working on that now and is preparing some document for further consideration. We have 2 major searches underway right now, one for the Camden Chancellor, which is moving along nicely. We've had a series of town halls for faculty, staff, and students, and for the Senior Vice President for Research. The review of our Responsibility Center Management Budget Model has been kicked off and is being chaired by Senior Vice President for Strategy, Brian Ballantyne. Moving ahead quickly, for spring 2021, plans have been announced by each chancellor. We will still predominantly be remote, but we opened up our doors, as it were, to have an increase in on-campus living. I'm pleased to announce that we do have a significant declaration of intent, people signing up for on-campus living, that all said and done is around holding now at 20% on the New Brunswick, 20% capacity on the New Brunswick campus, and increases, I don't have the percentages, I'm sorry, in Camden and in Newark, but that is a smaller census in the first place because there's just fewer housing. We feel very confident about our ability to manage the population from a health standpoint. We had a dry run of it, as you know, for the fall semester in New Brunswick, and the positivity rate is extremely low on campus. As Brian Strom will tell you, while we must take this virus very seriously, New Jersey, although the numbers are increasing, is doing far better than most places in the country. And on campuses for Rutgers, we are doing far better than New Jersey. So I'm proud of the teams that have been managing the testing and managing adherence to these plans. And I'm optimistic that as we go into spring 2021, we'll be able to start to rebuild an on-presence community and the attendant cultures on our respective undergraduate campuses. Finally, I want to thank Richard Roper for his service on the board, as this will be his final board meeting. Richard has served on the Board of Governors since 2013. He has made important contributions in lending his wisdom to our Committee on Academic and Student Affairs, the Joint Committee on Investments, and the Executive Committee. He has a special place in my heart because he was on, of course, the Board of Governors Committee that tapped me to serve as your president. So I'm in debt to him for what I'm presuming to be his kind words of support. I spent only a few months getting to know Richard, but I appreciate all that you've done for Rutgers. So if you will join me in a virtual round of applause for Richard Roper in acknowledgement of his great work on our behalf. This concludes my comments.
And thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan, indeed. And Richard, while we have you, your service to Rutgers has been around, as everybody knows, since long before 2013. In the 1960s, when I was at Rutgers and Richard was at Rutgers, In Newark, New Jersey, Richard Roper got into a lot of good trouble and made Rutgers a better place. And God bless you for that, Richard Roper. Thank you. And if we were all together, we would be celebrating over a lunch of macaroni and cheese in your honor, sir. But we're not together. We will do that in due course. I look forward to it very much. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And Godspeed and good fortune to you as you move on to chair a very important board in the state of New Jersey. We're rooting for you. Go get
Thank you.
more to come later from Bill Bast. Now, on the subject of communication from the Rutgers community, I would state that is particularly important not only to this board, but to our new president. And so I am pleased to report that at our president's request, after the remarks that we're about to hear from members of the community, our president will make general remarks in response to what he hears. And he's asked for the option of doing that at meetings going forward. I'm hoping that this will be regarded in the way that we intended, as a constructive step toward fuller and more open communication. You'll also see that we increased the number of the maximum number of speakers. Looking forward to that. We don't have that maximum today, but we will in due course in the future, and all good improvement. Lastly, at our last meeting of the Board of Governors, there were approximately a handful of folks who wanted to speak, but we weren't able to accommodate them because they weren't speaking to specific items on the agenda. I'm delighted to report that we reached out offline between the last meeting and now to all of those folks, and some of them were interested in having a conversation with our president, and I'm delighted to report that that took place. So moving on, I would call first on a member of our class of 1921, Ms. Molly Pasacantando, a major in physical oceanography. Ms. Pasacantando, if you are on the line and you would like to speak, you hereby are welcome to do so.
Class of 2021, quick correction.
Is that not what I said?
No.
You said 1921.
Oh dear. I'm looking at a piece of paper that says 21. I was still in my mind honoring Richard Roper. I will do that regularly for some time to come.
I was going to be very impressed.
I wasn't there that far back.
So, Mr. Chair, I did try to unmute Mrs. Pasacatano, but then she disappeared. I don't know that she is currently on right now.
Okay, let's move on then to Ms. Christine O'Connell, please.
Good afternoon. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all. My name is Christine O'Connell, and I am the president of Union of Rutgers Administrators, American Federation of Teachers, and I represent over 2,500 staff who work at Rutgers in hundreds of departments that span all aspects of academics, libraries, auxiliary services, and operations. We are the backbone of this university. And when you choose to find savings through layoffs that devastate our lives and the lives of our families, it is a poor choice. The impact doesn't only affect the staff who are laid off and their families, but hurts the very students that we espouse to serve. Your consideration of spending more money to purchase 3 floors at the Gateway building instead of leasing it this time is not one that we support. Perhaps there are reasons that I'm not aware of at this of long-term savings, But when over 1,000 people are laid off and struggling to make ends meet and put food on their tables during one of the worst economic downturns in history and during a global pandemic, you should choose to retain workers. Your employees are the people who provide the exemplary service to our students. Students come to Rutgers to get a stellar education to help move them toward success as adults, as many of you have attained. My members take great pride in their part in that process, from recruiting them, reviewing their applications and admissions, guiding and advising them through their educational journey, feeding them, housing them, and yet continue to be overlooked as integral contributors in Rutgers' success. We are a great university because of their work. So I take this opportunity to ask you, Board of Governors, to use your influence to rescind the layoffs that have happened and return those who have been separated and are separating soon. The 8 people in libraries, dozens across FNEP, genetics, physics, economics, ESL, English, history, political science, and dining. These people who are laid off are integral to their departments. Some may be the only administrative person in their department who manages the grants, make sure that money is properly spent and accounted for, assist our students, educate in the community, and so many more things. Their absence is more than cost savings. Their loss is measurable and leaves a void for our students. And they certainly make more of a difference in the success of our students than whether we purchase another 3 floors at the Gateway building. Thank you for your time and consideration. I appreciate your listening, and I hope that you reconsider decisions that have been made.
Thank you for your thoughtful and obviously heartfelt remarks, Ms. O'Connell. Next, Professor Rebecca Collins-Given, please, Associate Professor in our School of Management and Labor Relations.
Hi, yes, I hope you can hear me. I guess you can't see me, but thank you for taking the time. My name's Rebecca Given. I'm an associate professor in the School of Management and Labor Relations, and I'm also vice president of our faculty and grad worker union. And I'm calling to ask all of you and ask you personally, Chair Engelson, to commit to equitable pay across the university and for our faculty. Some of you may know that in our last collective bargaining agreement, we negotiated a pay equity process for the hundreds of faculty who are currently paid inequitably across the university. And we were really proud, and Rutgers administrators were really proud to commit to a process that would tackle inequities and create a more equitable place that that we could all feel was effective and was not perpetuating long-standing inequities that are not necessarily the fault of anyone in leadership today, but nevertheless exist and reflect broader inequities in our society. So I'm inviting you really to take a personal role in making sure that this pay equity program works. Right now, the program is simply not working. We have faculty who have been waiting for 16 months for a pay adjustment. I would love for you to meet some of those faculty and hear their stories. They are absolutely heartbreaking. Faculty who have committed their careers to Rutgers, they could have gone elsewhere, but they are deeply committed to this institution and yet have been paid sometimes tens of thousands of dollars less than their comparable colleagues for substantially similar work. And it really, really challenges our commitment to the principle of equity and community and fairness. So I'd like to invite all of you to learn more about this program and to take it on, to take leadership and to make sure that the program functions properly and we truly have an equity program and an equitable pay policy that we can all feel proud of and that we all deserve. So thank you for the time.
Thank you, Professor Given. We're not in the business generally of responding to individual comments, but since you addressed one to me, I will respond. This board is fully in support of Jonathan Holloway's commitment to equity across the university, including in respect of pay equity. Rome wasn't built in a day, but he's on it. And I commend him for it on behalf of the board. And that's all I have to say about that. But thank you, Professor Given, for
Well,
your.
thank you. And I appreciate the shared commitment. I hope it can be, we can move to an implementation stage. And I think we all want to really be proud of our commitment to equity. So I think let's get there.
Thank you very much. Dr. Andre Morera, a postdoc in molecular biology and biochemistry, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
You're a little garbled, but please continue.
Okay, how about now? Sorry.
You're crackling, but we hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, sure. So I'm a postdoc in the Department of Molecular Biology and Biochemistry at Rutgers. With regard to the financial report, I understand the university as a whole is operating at a deficit of something approaching 60 million this year, which apparently constitutes a fiscal emergency. That said, I'm wondering, given $500 million in unrestricted reserves this university has, why it has used this so-called fiscal emergency to justify laying off so many workers and turning down the mutually beneficial proposals put forth by the coalition of Rutgers unions that could have avoided this layoff, in addition to saving the university many millions of dollars compared to the decision it actually took. It is a shameful stain on the reputation of Rutgers that it is willing to thrust so many into financial precarity at a time of national crisis, all while falsely claiming it is in a state of fiscal emergency. In addition, this fiscal emergency has been used as a rationale to further delay our postdoc contract negotiations. I wish to bring to your attention that us postdocs have been working without a collective contract for over 1.5 years now. Throughout this time, we have been in negotiations with the management, and all that has happened is endless foot dragging despite good faith discussion and reasonable demands and concessions on our part. Even before COVID, bargaining sessions have been infrequent, with sometimes months in between sessions, and this is not because of us. We have never turned down a proposed bargaining date, and we've been very flexible. In fact, we recently agreed with management to meet again on November 30th, only for them to cancel on us yet again without making an effort to reschedule. I and other postdocs are left to believe that these delays are an intentional tactic on the part of management. Remember that it's workers like us that keep this university running. For our part as postdocs, we help bring in many millions of dollars through grants. We produce the research and innovations that put Rutgers on the map, and we mentor and teach undergrads and graduate students who go on to do the same. If you don't care about doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, perhaps this might be worth thinking about. Treating us and other workers badly will continue to dissuade future potential postdocs and others from coming here to work, which will do nothing to help Rutgers' success in the long run. And if that still doesn't sink in, also consider that workers will not continue to take this sitting down forever. There are few things that organize workers as well as mistreatment at the hands of their boss. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Dr. Althea Pestine Stevens, please. Postdoc in the School of Social Work.
Hi, thank you. And thank you, Dr. Morera. I would like to show my support for my colleagues. I'm a postdoc in the School of Social Work, but I'm in particular speaking on behalf of one colleague, postdoc colleague, Dr. Mateo Laganes-Fontenot, in the Center of Alcohol and Substance Abuse Studies, who was unable to attend today, but has signed up for speaking slots at 2 recent Board of Governor meetings, but was never called upon to have the 2 minutes he was due. This leaves us feeling very voiceless.
Hold on a second, please. Hold on a second, please. Madam Secretary, to the best of my knowledge, the statement that was just made is completely false. Am I right about that?
As far as I know, Mr. Chair, but I can definitely look into it.
Okay, so in respect of your colleague, if he has a grievance, ask him to reach out to our secretary, please, because that's not the way we run this rodeo. Please continue.
I will, and I did touch base with him just before speaking, and he said he had not received a response when he reached out to express his grievance following a recent Board of Governors meeting.
Heard you the first time. Your 2 minutes are running.
Thank you. I'm addressing item 15E2 about the allocation and transfer of resources. As postdocs, we work hard to increase the research output at Rutgers by running experiments for NIH-funded studies, conducting other timely research, obtaining external grants, and presenting and publishing our findings under the Rutgers name. You know who hasn't been doing their work? The Rutgers administration. Our collective contract expired in July 2019. Despite the union trying to reach an agreement, the negotiations have been purposefully postponed and delayed by Rutgers, canceling sessions and arriving unprepared to negotiate at the sessions they do uphold. Today, the postdoc community stands in solidarity with the rest of the staff and faculty now that the new budgets are being approved. However, this financial report does not acknowledge postdoc contract negotiations because they were overdue by nearly a year and a half. We wish to remind the Board of Governors that most of our salaries are independent from the Rutgers budget. Many are financed through grants, including the National Institute of Health. Granting postdocs a fair salary should be independent of any budget cuts or negotiations for the next year. Rutgers can find money to buy more property, yet uses the fiscal emergency to delay good faith negotiations. We ask that you please unblock the negotiations for a new collective contract. Rutgers is losing talented postdoctoral researchers because of the low salaries and poor working conditions. Let's reach a fair agreement so that we can keep working for the reputation of the university. Thank you for hearing me today.
Professor Lilia Fernandez, Associate Professor, Latino and Caribbean Studies. Dr. Fernandez, over to you.
Yes, good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, clearly. Please proceed.
Thank you. Good afternoon, President Holloway, Board of Governors. I have two questions, and I just want to echo the points that some of the other folks have already made, and I'm trying to be as brief as possible. First, Rutgers received $54 million from the Federal CARES Act in April, the second highest grant from the federal government of all universities in the country. Half of that money, I assume, was used for student assistance as it shows on the budget, the financial report that agenda item 15E refers to. But this budget shows only 27 million more in federal and student aid revenue than projected. So my question is, what happened to the other $27 million? The administration did spend $5.7 million for 8,000 iPads for freshman students. That expense came presumably in part from the Federal CARES Act money. It went, however, to SHI, the corporate sponsor of Rutgers football, in a no-bid contract. So my question is, how does the university justify paying a corporate sponsor while it's laying off part-time instructors, staff, and others? Second, as most of you know, I have been a vocal opponent of university plans to buy and demolish the Lincoln Annex Public School, which serves 750 mostly low-income Latino students, to make way for RWJ and Rutgers to expand the Rutgers Cancer Institute. RWJ Barnabas financial reports show that as part of those plans, Rutgers sold the brand name of Rutgers Health for $100 million to RWJ, with most of that money received during this past year. But in the RBHS portion of this financial report, that large infusion of cash is not readily apparent. So what is being done with that money? And finally, I just want to echo the points that a few other folks have made, that we have ample reserves. We've received enormous infusions of cash from the CARES Act, RWJBH during this crisis, yet the university is crying poverty and implementing austerity measures, such as cutting, at least in SAS, cutting faculty research budgets and laying off instructors and staff. And finally, I simply want to note, I'm sure the irony is not lost on anyone here, that President Holloway just announced the naming of a building in Newark after Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And as a colleague said, they are still struggling to get pay equity for 150 of my colleagues. Thank you very much.
Professor Beth Leach, Director of Graduate Studies in the Department of Political Science, please.
Thank you. I'd like to address item 15D1 from your consent agenda, which is the proposed changes to the Title IX grievance procedure. So yeah, I am a professor and Director of Graduate Studies for the Department of Political Science. In 2018-19, I served on the university-wide Committee on Sexual Harassment Prevention and Culture Change. And I also have personal experience with Rutgers' current Title IX policies from having filed a harassment complaint on behalf of a group of graduate students from our department. I'm concerned that the proposed policy as written may have a chilling effect on the willingness of victims of sexual harassment to come forward. The current policy is already quite intimidating for potential complainants, and this new policy adds to that intimidation by its requirement on page 23 that complainants must sign a non-disclosure agreement. Now, I do understand that some of the changes in the proposed policy are necessary due to changes in federal rules regarding Title IX. The Rutgers non-disclosure statement, however, goes well beyond what the federal rule requires and well beyond what other Big Ten universities are requiring. It is possible for parties to the complaint to abide by FERPA and other privacy laws without making them agree to keep everything about the entire proceeding secret. The Title IX process is already extremely difficult for victims of harassment to go through. The complainants, in my experience, are usually graduate students and untenured professors who are at a power disadvantage compared with the accused. Limiting their freedom in this process with a gag order further diminishes their chances to seek justice. In closing, I think we need to remember that the purpose of a university's Title IX policy should not be solely to protect the university from lawsuits. It should also have the goal of helping to minimize sexual harassment at the university by protecting and supporting those who are victimized. I hope you'll consider revising this segment of the policy.
Thank you, Professor Leach, for your thoughtful, obviously heartfelt, and to the best of my knowledge, largely correct remarks. Professor David Hughes. David.
Thank you. Can you hear me, Mr. Angelson? Mark?
Clearly, Dr. Hughes. David, please proceed.
Very good, very good. As you know, I'm a professor of anthropology in New Brunswick and treasurer of the Rutgers AUP AFT Faculty and Grad Union. Just a quick question on procedure, Mark. I gather that President Holloway is acknowledging our ability to speak about any topic, not just the agenda items, correct?
Not correct.
All right, well, I am going to talk about the beloved community, which does not appear on the agenda, but it certainly appears on President Holloway's agenda. I think it's—
You're out of order. You're out of order, David. You're out of order, David.
So if the president wishes to communicate with the union and with the faculty, he will allow me to
David, you're out of order. Kim, David, I'm going to offer you one last chance to speak in the way that you asked to speak, which was in respect of a specific agenda item. You are welcome to speak to it. If you're not going to speak to it, we're going to move on.
So I want to know what the beloved community means for workers, for neighbors, and
cut him off, Kim.
Sources.
Sorry, David. I know you're coming from a good place, but rules are rules. Mr. Charles Cradaville, editor of New Brunswick Today.
One second, Mr. Chair. He's, Mr. Cradaville, it looks like I cannot get you to talk. Let me try New Brunswick Today. Can I bring you on as New Brunswick Today? Let's try that. Mr. Cradaville, can you unmute for New Brunswick Today? Mr. Cradaville, it says that I cannot unmute you because you're using an older version of Zoom at this time. I apologize. Mr. Chair, I cannot unmute Mr. Cradaville, unfortunately.
Next time, Uh, if any time in the next couple of minutes that changes, please do let us know. Mr. President, you have asked for the privilege of making remarks at this point. We welcome them. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, is Molly Pasacantando, I know you said that she was not able, did she check back in? And she might have had technical challenges like I did at the beginning of this meeting? Before I begin my comments.
President Holloway, I do not see her on here right now.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure that.
Jonathan, she asked to be taken off the agenda.
Oh, I apologize. Okay, I was unaware of that. So thank you, everybody. I want to take a minute or two to explain why Chair Engelson and I are trying a new approach, if only a modest change, to how the open comment moment the Board of Governors proceeds. As you know, the first time the Board of Governors met this fall, by standing practice, the president did not have the opportunity to speak, did not feel comfortable to me, given my commitments to making the administration more transparent and my commitment to being more accessible, which is also, I mean, of course, difficult, mediated as it is in this electronic format. A commitment to accessibility that I hope in due course, once we're on the other side of this pandemic, faculty, staff, and students will recognize that I take this quite seriously. In any event, so I thought it would be helpful to have a few minutes of comment. I want to be clear, though, that as far as level setting, that as far as your expectations, that my comments now and in the future are not a Q&A in the sense of asking questions to me and getting answers. That is best done in the University Senate, as far as I'm concerned, which I will frequent along with Prabhas Mogi. So this is a general assessment based on what I've heard, and it will not be global in terms of all the issues that are being raised, that were raised in the comment period. But I do want to say a few things very quickly. I know several people spoke about their concern about why is Rutgers spending all this money on buying property when it appears to them that we are ignoring quality of life issues, employment issues, et cetera, of a hard living workforce. I want to be clear that this, the 3 floors in Gateway is property that we already lease, and that by buying this property, we're actually in short, medium, and long, well, at least in medium and long term, lowering the cost of using that space. And instead of paying another person's debt service, that we can carry it ourselves. So it's a smart financial move that really does not have a negative impact in real dollars in this particular moment. I know it might not seem that way at first, at glance of just looking at the headlines, but that is the fact of the matter. Different speakers spoke about concerns about layoffs and such. I share those concerns. There's nothing that any of us like about this particular financial moment that we're all facing, and I'm deeply sympathetic to people who find themselves in really difficult situations. I wish the mathematics on this were really quite different. I don't know, quite honestly, with all respect, don't know where the number of a $60 million deficit is coming from. Even if in our wildest dreams, we would love to be merely at a $60 million deficit. We are in continuing conversation with labor unions. I'm not able to get into details about that, but considering the fact that 66% of our annual budget is the cost of employment, which is more or less industry standard. There's no complaint from me on that standpoint. The fact is that we are facing an enormous difficulties financially, that the deficit is comfortably into 9 digits. And that is one of that is the core reason for the fiscal emergency declaration, and the only way that we are going to try to find a way to manage forward is to find a way to reach an agreement with many of our unions. And that's an ongoing conversation when it comes to issues of what have been scheduled pay increases, whether we can furlough or not furlough. Those are issues on the table. It's not for me to comment on that any further at this moment. One speaker spoke about equitable pay, and Mark, Chair Engelson, did speak about the board's commitment to supporting me. I absolutely believe in the importance of pay equity. When I discovered when the process was brought to my attention and the fact that it had been slowed down to be politic, especially given the emergency of COVID, made it quite clear to my senior administration that we needed to pick up the pace and move forward with great dispatch. And that discovery came to me soon after my university Senate address. And we are, it is exquisitely difficult. I think that it would have been much better to have a more robust conversation about the nature of how pay equity is actually sorted out before we entered this process. That predates me, but here we are. And I think we're going to have, it's my understanding, we are very close to moving forward with decisions about pay equity. If it weren't for the winter break upcoming, it would be in the next couple of weeks, I believe. This will be extended by a little bit further. We are really committed to doing this right. There's been delays that I'm not happy with. We're committed to doing it right, and been working together in new ways, get it right going forward. So I'm deeply committed to this issue and want to see it resolved. On Title IX, because this issue is so complicated, I do want to call on Tim Fournier to offer a very quick clarity about, because I don't want to misspeak. I want to get clarity about what our limits are in terms of what the federal government declares is the space we occupy, and then the extra work, extra opportunities and policies that Rutgers has in place to support those people who bring forward complaints in this matter. Tim, are you available to offer quick? Thank you.
Thank you, President Holloway. As you know, Rutgers had monitored the proposed changes in the Title IX regulations since they were first proposed about 2 years ago. And once the regulations were finalized, we had the university's Title IX coordinators and supplementing the membership of our longstanding Title IX Review Committee with other students, faculty, and staff, and they developed and drafted new policies and procedures to help ensure alignment with the new federal regulations for the August 14th effective date. The definition changed in what looks like a small way, but substantively in a very significant way to reduce the kinds of behaviors that would be afforded Title IX protections. And so as part of this overall effort, while we have these two Title IX policies that are in the consent agenda today, the rest of the university's policies and protections around other behaviors that no longer fall under the Title IX protections continue to be addressed through our policies and procedures. It is the committee and the university have felt that it's very important to provide as many protections as we can to our students or faculty and staff in this area, even if Title IX no longer will.
Thank you, Tim. This is a very complicated issue, made more complicated by national politics and different belief systems when it comes to this issue. But having played a very direct hand in this world when I was Dean of Yale College, I was what was called the decision maker on issues of Title IX. I know how deeply, how horrifying many of the Title IX situations can be, operating at many different levels. So again, I take these concerns very seriously, and I know I'm joined by my administration in that, and we'll do everything we can within what we're allowed to do to be sure we are creating safe spaces for those people who bring forward Title IX grievances and claims, because we do want to do the right thing by so many different people in these very tough situations. Thank you so much for your patience and for this this first step in a process about trying to bring the administration just that much closer to the larger population. With that, I turn over my time.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Tim. A new day. Mr. Cradaville, I'm told that you're back on the line, and in the hope that you will be as constructive as President Holloway has been, notwithstanding the fact that the time for questions has passed. You have 2 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mr. President. And I do want to give a special thank you to the secretary for working with me to get me on the line here. I do want to raise a concern about the bylaws having a maximum number of speakers. I believe the number is 12 in there. And I do want to point out there's 9 million residents of the state of New Jersey, and this board schedules about 6 meetings a year. One was canceled this year. So, limiting the number of public comments, not only to 2 minutes and not only requiring advance notice and not only requiring it to only be on agenda items, but also limiting the number of folks is really anti-democratic, and I don't think the board should. I do also, just want to raise the point that the largest turnout at your meeting, the largest number of people that spoke this year was on the issue of the Lincoln Annex School, which is still standing and should not be destroyed until an adequate replacement is built and opens in the neighborhood. And I don't believe the board or the president has addressed this yet. And I do, I have tried to engage with the president's office and haven't gotten responses. And I want a real dialogue on this. And I hope that, in the spirit of equity and good trouble and, just being good neighbors, that the president will engage in a dialogue with me and with the parents and the children who stand to lose their school if this project moves forward. I think it's been done in a very disrespectful way to the community, and I'd like to hear from either the president or the board about
Mr. Cradaville, I'm cautioning you, that's not on the agenda today.
Fair enough. The NBPA matter, I will point out the NBPA has pulled out of that project. They're not going to be involved in the RCI NJ. I know you're about to make a purchase of some floors of office from them. I would follow their lead and pull out of any project that's going to displace
2 minutes, Mr. Cradaville.
750 young children from their school. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cradaville. Thank you very much. Moving on. Richard, I promise you we're not going to celebrate you every minute for the next 30 years, although I mean that 90%. We may actually do that. Bill Best, may I call on you, please, to further celebrate our friend Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Richard, before the resolution, I would like to personally thank you for your friendship, support, and sage advice over the years. It's been much appreciated. Okay, Richard W. Roper. Whereas your colleagues and friends wish to gratefully acknowledge your years of service to Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, as a public governor from July 15, 2013 to December 17, 2020. And whereas serving as a member of the Joint Committee on Investment from 2014 to 2020, your astute business acumen and insightful guidance helped shepherd the university endowment to new heights and ensure that Rutgers is on a firm financial footing. And whereas a member of the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs for 6 years and serving as chair of that committee for 4 years, your passion and concern for issues impacting students of the university is undeniable as you continually displayed an abiding commitment to inclusivity and equity for all members of the university community. And whereas your discerning counsel and wisdom on the Board of Governors, Executive Committee was instrumental to the success of the university, as your extensive experience in public affairs provided the forethought and tact necessary to navigate the university's most delicate administrative and political situations, and whereas you have devoted countless hours to the advancement of your alma mater and have been a steadfast advocate for Rutgers throughout your tenure, as well as a voice for Rutgers University in Newark, often serving as a confidant to the Chancellor, and providing guidance to various advisory boards and committees. And whereas your thoughtful contributions will leave an indelible mark on the university, ensuring that Rutgers upholds its promise of an affordable world-class education while continually striving for the betterment of society. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Board of Governors of Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, express their deepest gratitude and heartfelt thanks to Richard W. Roper for his distinguished service to the university and the Board of Governors, and extend their warmest best wishes for the future. Board of Governors, Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, December 17, 2020. Mr. Chair, I so move.
Thank you very much. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution is passed. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you all very much.
Mr. Tambusi, the report of the Finance and Facilities Committee, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Finance and Facilities met on December 2nd, 2020. My report, a summary, which, and I apologize in advance for its length, is divided into two sections: matters for action, some of which you've heard previews of, and matters for information. Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer Antonio Calcato presented for endorsement two resolutions relating to the Behavioral Health Treatment Center and residents, a project previously approved by this board. The first resolution modifies the project approval to accommodate an expanded program. This center will serve families in New Jersey and neighboring states with the first ever residential treatment center located in New Jersey for up to 16 patient clients for inpatient treatment, and as well as provide outpatient treatment that could serve hundreds of clients annually. The anticipated completion date of this project is early in 2023, and the expanded program will cost approximately $42.5 million. Funding for the construction of this project will be entirely through philanthropy, with a primary donor pledging the bulk of the project costs. The overall program has been modeled to be financially viable and self-sustaining. That donation is the impetus for the second resolution, approving the naming of the Behavioral Health Treatment Center and residents on Cook campus as the Brandt Behavioral Health Treatment Center and residents. This resolution recognizes Board of Overseers Emeriti Marlene Brandt, who has pledged a generous gift of up to $41,458,000 to support this project. The Brandt Behavioral Health Treatment Center and residents will provide a welcoming refuge and well-appointed space for the psychiatric and psychosocial treatment and recovery of adolescents and young adults. Mr. Chair, I move the two resolutions, and I now ask Chancellor Brian Strom to read the resolution for naming the facility. Dr. Strom?
Thank you. I assume people can hear me okay?
Yep.
Thanks. Whereas adolescents and young adults in the United States increasingly face depression, anxiety, and other serious mental health challenges, and finding appropriate care, which can help young people address these disorders and lead fulfilling lives, can be exceptionally difficult, especially in New Jersey. And whereas to meet this urgent need, Rutgers has launched the Initiative for Youth Behavioral Health and Wellbeing, the first and only program of its kind in the Garden State, which aims to transform behavioral health care for young people in the state of New Jersey and beyond. And whereas Rutgers alumna and Board of Overseers Emerita Marlene Brandt has provided a generous gift of up to $41,458,000 to support this initiative by underwriting the construction of a behavioral health treatment center and residence hall situated on the Cook campus, which will provide a welcoming refuge and well-appointed space for the psychiatric and psychosocial treatment and recovery of adolescents and young adults. And whereas on November 6th, 2020, the University Naming Committee considered and approved naming the proposed Behavioral Health Treatment Center and Residence Hall, the Brandt Behavioral Health Treatment Center and Residence, and thereafter recommended approval to Rutgers President Jonathan Holloway, who also approved the name. And whereas on December 2nd, 2020, the Committee on Finance and Facilities reviewed the proposed naming and recommended approval by the Board of Governors. Now therefore be it resolved that upon the recommendation of President Jonathan Holloway, University Naming Committee, and the Committee on Finance and Facilities, the Board of Governors of Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, approves the naming of the Behavioral Health Treatment Center and Residence Hall to be located on the Cook campus as the Brandt Behavioral Health Treatment Center and Residence. And be it further resolved that on behalf of Rutgers University, the Board of Governors extends its deep appreciation to Marlene Brandt for her generous gift that made this facility possible and her long-standing support of Rutgers.
Thank you, Brian. Is there a second to the motion? I heard a second. Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolutions are passed. Back to you, Bill.
Thank you. Mr. Calcato presented for endorsement the proposed resolution to name 15 Washington Street at Rutgers University, Newark, for Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. This will allow the university to recognize the late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a Rutgers law professor from 1963 to 1972. During this time, she began her work, which would be later recognized as the start of her becoming a pioneer in women's legal rights. That work was started in the beautiful building that continues to be a thriving part of shared knowledge and experiences at Rutgers University, Newark. Mr. Chair, I move the resolution and ask Chancellor Nancy Cantor to read the resolution. Chancellor?
Thank you. Whereas the naming of a building in a public institution offers the opportunity to reflect on the institution's core values and aspirations, and to honor individuals of high scholarly distinction who have contributed in exceptional ways to the public good. And whereas the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg was a legal giant, served as justice on the United States Supreme Court, a judge on the United States Court of Appeals for the DC Circuit, a trailblazing litigator for equal rights and justice, and a law professor at Rutgers Law School in Newark from 1963 to 1972. And where scholars, biographers, former colleagues and students, and Justice Ginsburg herself have noted that her time at Rutgers was an inflection point in her career, with legal scholars noting that Ginsburg was both pioneering the teaching of women's rights in law school and blazing the trail forward in the courts to assure those rights. And whereas Ginsburg remained connected to Rutgers throughout her life after leaving the university, maintaining close contacts with faculty, colleagues, and students whom she had taught and mentored. And on the occasion of the dedication of the Center for Law and Justice in September 1999 as the new home for the law school, Ginsburg turned to give the keynote address, during the course of which she identified herself with the school's long-standing public tradition of scholarship, teaching, and advocacy. And whereas 15 Washington Street, one of Newark's most distinguished buildings with a long and storied history, was the home of the Rutgers Law School Newark from 1979 through 2000, and is now a residential housing facility housing upwards of 330 undergraduate and graduate students, including many law students. And whereas on November 6, 2020, at the request of Chancellor Nancy Cantor, on behalf of Rutgers University Newark community, the University Naming Committee considered and approved 15 Washington Street, Ruth Bader Ginsburg Hall, and thereafter recommended approval to Rutgers President Jonathan Holloway, who also approved the name. And whereas on December 2nd, 2020, the Committee on Finance and Facilities reviewed the proposed naming and recommended approval by the Board of Governors. Now, therefore, be it resolved that upon the recommendation of President Jonathan Holloway, the University Naming Committee, and the Committee on Finance and Facilities, the Board of Governors of Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, approves the naming the building at 15 Washington Street in Newark as Ruth Bader Ginsburg Hall.
Thank you, Chancellor Cantor. Is there a second to Mr. Tambusi's motion, please?
Second.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is passed. Back to you, Mr. Tambusi.
Thank you. Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer Michael Gower presented for endorsement the proposed resolution approving Phase 4 scope and financing for the Administrative and Student Information Systems project. This resolution will allow the university to continue the implementation of the administrative and student information systems projects, including new systems and enhancements in human resources and payroll, student information and services, constituent relationship management, and other initiatives. The total amount of funding financed in this phase would be approximately $38.44 million for the period of January 1 through December 31, 2021. Mr. Chair, I move this motion.
Thank you. Is there a second, please?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The resolution is passed. Please continue, Mr. Tambusi.
Thank you. Mr. Calcato presented for endorsement the proposed resolution for the purchasing and financing of floors in the Gateway Transit Center. This resolution will allow the university to convert existing leases, exercising a purchase option for 3 floors of the Gateway Transit Center on the College Avenue campus. This purchase agreement will apply the net rent that will be paid through December 2020 towards the overall purchase option price. Mr. Chair, this resolution is under the consent agenda. Mr. Gower presented for endorsement the proposed resolution modifying the donor gift policy. This resolution will allow the university to amend the gift acceptance fee for gifts of $25 million or more to be assessed a gift fee of 1.25%. In addition to this amendment, other technical changes to the language were proposed to reflect current practice and references found in University Policy 40.2.13. Mr. Chair, this resolution is under the consent agenda. Mr. David Moore, Chief Budget Officer and Assistant Vice President for Financial Planning and Budgeting, presented for endorsement the proposed resolution accepting the fiscal year 2020 report on the allocation and transfer of resources across campuses. Mr. Moore provided the committee with an overview of the total university fiscal year 2020 final financial report with a review of the overall total university revenues of $4.493 billion and expenses of $4.528 billion that resulted in a negative operating position of approximately $34.5 million. After consideration of total planned transfers to support capital projects, the university's change in the operating budget balance for fiscal year 2020 was a negative $58.1 million. Mr. Moore shared that the negative position was primarily due to the loss of state appropriations in the last 4 months of the fiscal year, as well as the negative impact on university revenues experienced during the first few months of the current health crisis. Mr. Chair, this resolution is under the consent agenda. Following are matters for information. Mr. Adam Day, Associate Vice President and Associate Treasurer, presented the fiscal year 2020 strategic financial indicators and debt portfolio review. Mr. Day explained to the committee that as a result of the negative impact of COVID-19 on the university's financial performance and the increase in total debt, several of the debt-related financial metrics were adversely affected. The metrics regarding debt affordability and debt capacity are reviewed annually. Mr. Moore discussed the fiscal year 2021 financial report that compared the revenue and expense performance through October 31, 2020 to the overall fiscal year budget for fiscal year 2021. Through October, most of the university's revenue categories were on track to achieve the level of those approved in the fiscal year 2021 budget, with the exception of housing, dining, and similar revenues due to fewer students living on campus and purchasing meal plans. Mr. Moore continued with a review of the expense categories that showed each category below the level of expenditures experienced in the previous 3 fiscal years. Mr. Moore explained that much of this change is due to the overall efforts to contain and reduce discretionary spending and halting new capital planning and associated spending, which will help with the university's financial outlook for fiscal year 2021. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Please let's move on to the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. Mr. Hundley, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Academic and Student Affairs met on December 1st, 2020. It was held virtually via Zoom meeting, and it was chaired by myself. The meeting was called to order at 1 p.m. Dr. Prabhas Mogi, Executive Vice President for Academic Affairs, introduced the proposed University Policy 60.1.33 Title IX Policy and Grievance Procedures, and the proposed revisions to University Policy 10.2.11 Code of Student Conduct, and asked Dr. Timothy Fournier, Senior Vice President for Enterprise Risk Management, to further detail the changes to the policies, as well as the changes in federal law that prompted the university to revise the policies. Dr. Fournier explained that the United States Department of Education issued a revised regulations related to Title IX of the Education Amendments Act of 1972, prohibiting sex discrimination in educational institutions, and noted that the regulations were issued on May 19, 2020, after approximately 18 months of review and comment, and became effective on August 14, 2020. He added that in response, the university needed to revise its policies concerning sex discrimination to meet the new federal definition of sexual harassment, the scope of the Title IX relating to off-campus conduct, and to comply with new regulatory requirements for further investigating and adjudicating complaints of sexual harassment. Dr. Fournier further explained that the university's existing Title IX policies needed to be completely overhauled to meet the new regulations, resulting in one policy for students, employees, and third policies entitled University Policy 60.1.33, Title IX Policy and Grievance Procedures. He then reviewed the significant changes in the federal regulations and how those changes affected the university's policies and procedures. After a robust discussion, the committee agreed to endorse the proposed resolution adopting University Policy 60.1.33, Title IX Policy and Grievance Procedures to the Board of Governors for approval, and they have been placed in today's consent agenda. Dr. Fournier continued his presentation, advising the committee that University Policy 10.2.11 was revised to ensure congruency with University Policy 60.1.33, Title IX Policy and Grievance Procedures. He noted that additional policies related to Title IX have been revised for consistency, but those policies do not fall under Board of Governors approval. The committee agreed to endorse the proposed resolution approving revisions to University Policy 10.2.11, Code of Student Conduct, to the Board of Governors for approval, and that has also been included in today's consent agenda. Dr. Marsh informed the committee that moving on to Camden, Dr. Margaret Marsh informed the committee that the Computer and Information Sciences option within the existing Master of Business Science MBS degree program is being converted to full program status to MBA in Computer and Information Sciences to be awarded by the Graduate School Camden. She explained that the 43 credit MBS in Computer and Information Sciences will require 24 credits in computer information disciplines and 8 3-credit master's level technical courses selected from industry areas, including actuarial and statistical analysis, applied computing sciences, and industrial mathematics. Dr. Marsh went on to notify the committee that the School of Business in Camden will offer a standalone graduate certificate in modern financial technologies. She added that the 12-credit certificate will require 4 3-credit courses and will be offered fully online. Moving up the turnpike to Newark, Dr. Nancy Cantor, Chancellor for Rutgers University, Newark, said that total credit requirements for the Master of Science in Global Affairs degree program offered by the Graduate School Newark are being changed from 40 to 35 by changing the areas of inquiry course credits from 21 to 18 and the colloquium credits from 4 to 2. Dr. Cantor went on to talk about the Rutgers Business School graduate programs in Newark and New Brunswick, advising the committee that the total credit requirements for the Master of Science in Digital Marketing degree program offered fully online by Rutgers Business School graduate programs, Newark and New Brunswick, are being changed from 36 to 30 by changing the number of elective course credits from 21 to 15. Moving into the RBHS regarding the School of Public Health, Dr. Brian Strom, Chancellor for Rutgers Biomedical and Health Sciences and Executive Vice President for Health Affairs, advised the committee that the School of Public Health will offer a standalone graduate certificate in population aging, and that the 18-credit certificate will require 6 3-credit courses offered through the School of Public Health and the School of Health Professions. The committee then met in executive session to discuss personnel matters, which include faculty tenure appointment representatives. The committee agreed to endorse those recommendations for board approval, and they too have been placed in today's consent agenda. The meeting concluded at approximately 3:30 p.m. And that concludes the report on the Committee on Academic and Student Affairs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hundley. Ms. Heather Taylor, Chair of the Committee on Audit, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Committee on Audit met virtually on Thursday, October 29th from 9 a.m. to 12:10 p.m. Ms. Shelley Massey, KPMG partner, presented the committee with a draft of the university's financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2020. After review with the committee, Mr. Michael Gower, Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer, explained that the statements would not be final until information was received from the state in December related to post-retirement benefits. Neither Ms. Massey nor Mr. Gower expect substantive changes to the financial statements or the supplemental deliverables once information is received from the state. Mr. Gower requested that the committee conditionally approve the statements and allow the chair to give final approval on behalf of the Board of Governors once the statements were finalized. The committee unanimously agreed to accept conditionally the financial statements for the year ended June 30th, 2020. Ms. Ruth Philo, Chief Audit Executive, presented the Audit and Advisory Services 2021 Annual Audit Plan and requested that the committee approve the proposed plan, a requirement to comply with the Institute of Internal Auditor Standards. The committee unanimously approved the plan. Dr. Timothy J. Fournier, Senior Vice President for the Enterprise Risk, provided this committee with a brief verbal update on the high-risk areas of data security and privacy and foreign influence. Then Associate Vice President and Deputy Chief Enterprise Risk Management, Ethics, and Compliance Officer, Mr. Eugene Simon, continued with a series of presentations to the committee around the elements of an effective compliance program and the importance of establishing such a program in order to reduce the risk of noncompliance with regulations and deter unethical behavior. Ms. Philo presented on completed audits reports that have been issued since the last meeting. as well as ongoing follow-up efforts within the department to close out past due recommendations. The committee then met in private session with KPMG, followed by a session with Audit and Advisory Services. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Amy Towers, Chair of the Committee on Health Affairs.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Committee on Health Affairs met on November 16th, and we opened the meetings with 4 items for endorsement presented by Dr. Frank Ganassi of UBHC that included minutes from 2 previous meetings, a list of staff appointments, reappointments, and clinical privileges, a quality improvement report for the second quarter, and lastly, a plan for professional services for 2020. All 4 items were unanimously endorsed by the committee and brought forward to the board today under the consent agenda. We had 6 other informational items during our meeting, the first of which was also presented by Dr. Ganassi, a further update on UBHC, which includes a discussion of the university's correctional health care's daily testing of inmates, further discussion on UBHC and its continuing rollout of the new model of care in coordination with RWJ Barnabas Health for unmanaged physical disorders that are believed to be a result of behavioral issues. Dr. Ganassi also informed the committee of a program with Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital in Somerset, New Jersey, which will be focused on trauma-informed care, as well as an outpatient program for LGBTQ patients. Dr. Ganassi concluded his report with an update, which you previously heard, which was previously presented on the Behavioral Health Treatment Center and residents on Cook campus. Following Dr. Ganassi's report, Dr. Richard Marlink of the Global Health Institute provided a report to the committee. He explained that there are 5 global health centers across Rutgers with 102 core faculty and a 57-member student council. He clarified that global health is not international health, but rather the practice of addressing global health inequities wherever they may occur. Dr. Marlink gave us an update on the COVID-19 pandemic and the Institute's role in the state of New Jersey's Mile Markers program, which focuses on a road back to normalcy for small businesses. Dr. Marlink also spoke about the university's partnership for health in Botswana, addressing cancer, and stated that Rutgers is working with the government of Botswana to establish a national comprehensive cancer care and prevention program, joint research capabilities, and training programs to build workforce development, technical advisors in the commissioning of a new teaching hospital, and lastly, COVID-19 support. Interesting to note that in Botswana, there's a 75% mortality rate across all cancers, and in America and other developed countries, there's a 75% survival rate across all cancers. Important work being done with Dr. Marlink and the Global Health Institute. Third, we received a report from Dr. Brian Strom, Chancellor for Rutgers Biomed and Health Services, and also Executive Vice President for Health Affairs. Chancellor Strom reviewed his goals and provided an overview of RBHS for the committee. He then detailed RBHS's research portfolio statistics, which are quite impressive. He also reviewed RBHS strategic plan for 2014 to 2019 and discussed the process for updating the strategic plan for 2021 to 2026. Chancellor Strom provided an overview of the status of the COVID-19 pandemic response, including numbers globally, nationally, and local for the state of New Jersey. Chancellor Strom reviewed the contact tracing efforts being led by the School of Public Health, as well as RBHS research highlights, including the establishment of the Center for COVID-19 Response and Pandemic Preparedness, as well as the university's participation in 2 clinical vaccine trials you are likely aware of. Chancellor Strom concluded his report with a review of media coverage and goals for 2021. Fourth, we received an update from Ms. Bramwell, the Senior Vice Chancellor of Finance and Administration, on the budget. We received a detailed report of the actual financial performance as of the first quarter of 2021, and we reviewed a post-COVID budget review version 2.0. 5th, we received a clinical update from Dr. Gracias, Senior Vice Chancellor for Clinical Affairs and Vice President for Health Affairs, who updated the committee on Rutgers Health, beginning with a review of COVID-19 testing and tracing. He then reviewed enhancements to the testing dashboard and communications that are provided to the university community. We also discussed the Rutgers contact tracing initiatives, as well as the New Jersey Medical School, Robert Wood Johnson Medical School Peer Support Program pilot, which is established to address the emotional impact of COVID-19 on both clinicians and our faculty. Dr. Gracias then updated the committee on the efforts to integrate the clinical practice with RWJ Barnabas Health, reviewed the development of clinical data warehouse, which will reliably integrate data from all electronic medical records, and concluded his report with a review of KPIs. And finally, the committee received comments from Chancellor Strom on proposed amendments to the Robert Wood Johnson Medical School bylaws. This concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Towers. I next call on Mrs. Derrick to give the report on the Committee on Intercollegiate Athletics. And before she starts, I note in passing, and one can only pray that we can have a similar report again in the future. We have an undefeated basketball team, undefeated generally, undefeated in the Big Ten. It's ranked 19th in the nation. God bless Steve Peichel, his team, and let's hope that Geo Baker's ankle continues to improve, because it feels like 1975, 1976 to me all over again. We also have a football team that is 3-5 in the Big Ten, and my golly, but for two plays would be 5-3. Mrs. Derrick, over to you.
It's good news for sports. Thank you very much. Athletics met yesterday, December 16th. General athletics update is Mr. Patrick Hobbs, Athletic Director for the Division of Athletics for Rutgers, New Brunswick, provided a general athletics update. He first gave a brief overview of the topics that would be covered during the meeting. He then highlighted the recent success of our athletic teams and specifically pointed to the men's basketball team, which has had the best start to a season since 1935. He also highlighted the academic success of our student athletes, noting that 123 students were named to the fall all-academic Big Ten list, and that the division set a school record with graduation success rate of 90. He concluded his report with a status update on the key athletic facilities. Then for our medical update, Dr. Joshua Bershad, Chief Medical Officer for the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, provided a medical update to the committee and gave an overview of the safety measures in place to protect student athletes during the pandemic. He compared Rutgers safety protocols to other universities in the National Collegiate Athletic Association, NCAA, and provided an outlook for the spring. Dr. Bershad also highlighted the strategic plan for sports health and noted key advancements in the services the division is able to provide to student athletes, specifically with regard to mental health. Then Racial Justice Working Group, Mr. Hasim Phillips, Associate Athletic Director for Communications and co-chair of the Racial Justice Working Group, presented the work being done by the working group and the impact on our student athletes. He noted that the hiring and retention of minorities and community engagement. He provided an overview of the progress made to move this important initiative forward. Then there was a budget update. Mr. Michael Sewell, Senior Associate Athletic Director for Finance, Administration, and Planning, provided an update on the division's budget. Compliance update. Mr. Matthew Potarf, Senior Associate Athletic Director and Chief Compliance Officer, provided a compliance update. He first highlighted the fact that it was signing day for the football program and reviewed the anticipated recruits expected to sign with the Rutgers football program. He then provided a general overview of compliance issues throughout the NCAA and their implications for the university. specifically speaking to issues surrounding name, image, and likeness. The meeting began at 10 and concluded at 11:30. Mr. Chair, that concludes the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Derrick. Mr. Best, sir, over to you.
Are there any items that the members want to remove from the consent agenda? Mr. Chair, upon the recommendations of the Governor's Executive Committee, Committee on Academic and Student Affairs, Committee on Finance and Facilities, and Committee on Health Affairs, I move that the board approve the items contained in the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes. Mr. Gower, sir, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Reporting on the Joint Committee on Investments, the JCOI met twice since the last meeting of this board. It met on November 18th for consideration of a time-sensitive investment opportunity in private equity. The committee endorsed this investment. Committee Chair Tilak Lal also gave an update on the current divestment request process regarding fossil fuels. The committee held its regular meeting on Tuesday of this week, December 15th. During this meeting, Chief Investment Officer Jason McDonald presented the annual review of the university's spending policy in regard to the endowment. No changes were recommended in that policy. The committee then considered and endorsed 1 new investment and 4 rebalancing and redemption recommendations. And these are identified in the minutes that are available to you on the portal. Mr. McDonald then reviewed the fiscal year 21 forward calendar of opportunities for investment, as well as leading a discussion with the committee on the importance and possibility of the investment office team spending additional time sourcing and investing in smaller and emerging investment managers and more concerted effort. CIO McDonald then reviewed final fiscal year 20 performance, which is slightly above zero, in a good position considering what was happening last summer, and then updated performance for fiscal 21, which is showing much better performance. Members of the investment office internship program, which is a wonderful group of current students, then presented to the committee on their experiences as interns, discussing favorite projects within the investment office, as well as highlighting interesting learning opportunities during their time there. There was an overview for the committee of the investment management software tool that's being used by the office. Mr. McDonald provided the current version of the investment office's annual letter, which will be released soon. And then Mr. Law and myself, we presented an update on the university's ad hoc committee on divestment regarding fossil fuels, which is now doing its work. Mr. Chair, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Gower. Mr. Oliver, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to publicly thank President Holloway and EVPA Mogi for their continued support of the Senate and their commitment to shared governance. When I first met President Holloway last January, the first thing he said to me is how he knew he and I would be working together quite a bit and was looking forward to it. He's kept that commitment beyond my expectations. President Holloway and all of his senior leadership team have shown how important shared governance is to the president and how we can work together. I'm very grateful for this, and I know we will continue to work together for the betterment of all of the Rutgers community. I also want to thank Chair Engelson and the entire board for your support of the mission of the Senate. I very much appreciate the positive and engaging relationship that exists between the Senate and the governing boards. The University Senate is scheduled to host the Big Ten Academic Alliance Senate Leadership for all Big Ten institutions in October 2021. And we're now in the initial planning stages to ensure that we showcase all of the extraordinary research and teaching done here, as well as highlighting our rich and varied culture and all of our campus and all that each of our campuses have to offer. The University Senate has continued to be very active while only meeting electronically. Our committees in full Senate have been meeting via Zoom and are investigating 25 pending charges currently within our committees. Historically, the Senate, similar to the boards, typically meet in person with occasionally a member online, though they're often less able to participate since most activities take place in person and with senators interacting with each other by chance and by design. The pandemic caused the University Senate to create new pathways for meeting and voting on issues that come before the body. Once the COVID-19 pandemic arrived and the university and much of society shut down temporarily, the chair, vice chair, parliamentarian, and executive secretary met online daily to create a mechanism for the Senate to perform its business securely and to maintain its continuity. This was done by utilizing Zoom and building an online voting system, ensuring that only current senators eligible to vote can vote. An elaborate system following Robert's rules has now been in use successfully for several months. Remote access has increased senator participation, and all that we have learned will serve us well even when we do resume meetings in person. Our work continues, and we are encouraged by this enhanced participation due in part to the technologies we have adopted. The pending charges and subsequent reports by committee show very clearly all the hard work of our committees and the thoughtfulness they put in each report. These charges vary from those prompted by COVID to those looking at Title IX policy, the Code of Student Conduct, ad drop periods, healthcare, and many other areas, to name a few. I won't read all of the charges and reports, but encourage everyone to look at my written report for more information about Senate activities. This concludes my verbal report with my best holiday wishes. Once again, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Oliver. Thank you very, very much for your constructive engagement. Old business? New business? The last word is yours, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I simply want to wish everybody a peaceful and joyous, restful and rejuvenating break over the winter break, excuse me. For those who might still have some papers or final exams to grade, I hope the students do sparkling, and so your grading will go quickly. Peace to everybody.
Thank you. A motion for adjournment, please.
So moved.
Hearing no objections, we are adjourned. Thank you all. God bless.
Take care.
God bless. Okay.
Take care.
Felicitations.
Bye-bye.
Happy holiday. Bye-bye.